even interested remotely, drop us a thing. Otherwise, there's a lot to go into. I was not inducted as a keeper. I've had a number of congratulations emails, which is awkward because I was not inducted. But it was remarkable, and yeah, it was amazing, and tasted some really wonderful drams. There was a singleton of Dufton bottled specially, which was wonderful. There was some wonderful Talisker and Brora going around. It was a treat indeed.
Okay, that sounds amazing. The photos looked amazing.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. But we have 5 treat drams this evening as well, which is excellent.
We do.
So if you're new to Pour and Sip, we'll give you a little lowdown for what we do here. First of all, you're very, very welcome. Please get involved. So the comments and questions, whatever platform you're watching us on, YouTube, Facebook or Twitter, just drop us a line. We want to hear from you. We want your tasting notes. More importantly, actually, I don't know if it's more importantly, of equal importance, we want questions for our guests. We love your tasting notes as much as we love your questions. And we've got 2 excellent guests to come.
Yes, we do. Lots of comments coming in now. They've just come all at once. I think Pat Cowler, good evening all. My first one for a couple of months. So looking forward to it. Welcome back, Pat. TACD, evening. First time I'm catching a live tasting in quite a while. Where have all you people been and you're coming back?
You've been hiding from us.
Hiding. Malcolm Tucker welcoming them both back. Anthony Mullins, evening all. Hope you're all well. Yes, we are. Pat Cowling just got the latest 101 whiskies to try before you die. Some interesting drams to try. I'd hope out of 101 whiskies to try before you die, there should be some interesting ones, you would hope. Mikolai, long time no see. Pour and Sip live tasting. Where have all you guys been?
You know, all these old faces, it's great to have you back, but new names as well. Please get involved. Like,
yes,
we're a very friendly crew here, whether this is your first or, you know, very early whiskey in your spirited journey, or you're a seasoned pro. Come on.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Steve Cooper, evening all. Looking forward to some more pouring and sipping. Plastic Fantastic was going to watch it on the replay. I forget where we are also watched on replays, like we're the highlights reel, but managed to make it instead tonight. Huzzah! Richard Wingrove, evening all. Missed last month's tasting, but managed to make this one. Welcome, everybody. We are very pleased to see all you newcomers, people who are coming back, and people who've missed us for the last couple of months. How dare you? But welcome.
But welcome back. So at the moment, here's some behind the scenes goss for you. We have 2 guests. There may or may not be a third. We're not sure, but we'll see. But regardless, we're going to taste 5 whiskeys this evening with you guys, which is incredibly exciting. So the guests that we have Martin from Tomatin.
Oh, wow.
Only just realised we can say, what is wrong with me?
And he must have heard that a million times. So
Anyway, I'm pleased with that. And then we have Matthew from GlenWyvis, which I may or may not be saying correctly. I have been told.
With this earlier behind the scenes, and he was like, yes, that was right.
I hope it's right.
And now I think that's what it was.
Yes, I should have written it down phonetically. But yes, and then after that, so Fettercairn, we're going to taste third, the 12-year-old. Then Andy's going to take us through Masthouse. And last but not least, we're going to taste Kyrö, which I'm so excited about. I'm excited about all of them, but, you know, I love a little bit of smoke. I like it a lot.
Our first guest ever, I think, was from Kyrö, if I remember rightly.
I think you're correct. Somebody will remember, I'm sure. I'm looking at my phone just to see. Oh, some more comments. Joran Cavagna, missed you all. We've been traveling through Europe finally again, but good to be back with you all. I want to hear about your adventures. That sounds great. Steve Hickson, first one for 3 months, just couldn't make the other 2. And Kevin Blank just ordered the Christmas Advent Calendar, Roll on December, which is a nice little segue because we did want to remind you, we do have a Pour and Sip Advent Calendar coming. I think it's available now. And if you get it through the Pour and Sip store with your members discount, I think you get a third off, which is a pretty good chunk.
That's a pretty good deal.
A good one indeed. Right, I think enough of us. I've just thought when people say they watch us on replay, they can fast forward our spiel at the start.
How many people, what percentage do you reckon of people go, yeah, it's enough of that?
Enough of that. I think it's time for a first guess, and I need a dram, I think.
Yes.
It's Thursday, it's Pour and Sip o'clock. We need a dram in our hands. So Martin from Tomatin. Hello, Martin. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. My first event of this kind that I've done.
Oh, wow.
Welcome along. How many times do you get Martin from Tomatin?
Just today.
Really?
I guess no. I'm sure plenty of times from now onwards, though.
I feel like you were being kind to me. You're humouring me, Seth. Right. I'm going to take myself off and go and be proud of myself in private off screen for my little pun and leave you in Andy's much more sensible and capable hands. But I will be dramming along and I'll catch you in a bit.
Thank you.
See you later. Okay. How's it going?
Good, thanks. Good. Yeah, yourself?
Yes, not too bad. Whereabouts in the world are we talking to you from?
Funnily enough, I am at the visitor centre at the Tomatin distillery as we speak, bang in the heartland of the Highlands of Scotland.
Lovely stuff. So if you could just, I think it's always nice with Pour and Sip, especially with a guest that we've not had before. If you just tell us a bit about your whiskey journey, how you got into it, and how you found yourself in your current role.
Sure thing, yeah, not a problem at all. So yeah, as I say, my name's Martin. I'm the visitor centre manager up at Tomatin Distillery here. I've only been with the business since January. I've only been in the industry since January. Oh. How did I get into it? So in a previous life, working for a previous business, I was lucky enough to come up for a visit to the distillery here. Already knew a little bit about the whiskey, being from Inverness, which is about 15 miles away from the distillery. So growing up, we always knew about it. We used to sponsor my favourite football team, Inverness Thistle. A wee nod there. But
there's another one in Inverness.
Well, yeah, it's a long story. We won't go there. But 20 odd years ago, they joined Cali and Thistle together to make Caledonian Thistle, that's now in the big leagues. But anyway, as I say, don't start me. The tears will start again anyway. So yeah, we came up for a visit up here about 3 or 4 years ago, and we had a fantastic tour. As I say, I knew a bit about the whiskey, loved the whiskey anyway. But it was actually what stayed with me was the story of the distillery, the history, more importantly, the story of the people on site and the history of the people on site as well really blew me away, and it kind of stayed with me over the last few years. I have been working in just big box retail style, been managing food retail units over the last few years during lockdown. So I always wanted to put something back locally. I worked for a local farm, and this opportunity came up. I remembered my tour 3 years ago, and you know how much it kind of blew me away. And it was, yeah, after that, I was lucky enough to be offered the job, and here I am now. You know, so about 9 months into my journey here, and absolutely loving it. It's been hugely busy this summer for us in the visitor centre. At Easter, when we opened the doors again, we weren't sure how it was going to go. We weren't sure if we were going to have any visitors at all, but we've had about 25,000 people through our door. And that's in a village the size of Tomatin, which is only about 200 people. We've had about 6,000 people out touring the distillery, and it's just been a fantastic journey. I've learned a lot over the last few months. And as I was saying, it's just getting busier and busier. Still busy today. So yeah, it's a fantastic place to be. Very supportive team as well, and as I say, a great history to it.
Well, that leads us nicely on to our next question. So I would like to know, talk to us a little bit about the history, especially as a distillery manager. You have lots of stories for us.
Sure. So yeah, so where do we start? So we celebrated our 125th anniversary in July. First week in June, but we've probably had a distillery on this site for, give or take, probably since the 16th century. They reckon there's been some kind of illicit stills on site. This is part of a drover's route, so you used to get a lot of footfall coming from the north to the south and vice versa. So along your way, you would buy a bottle from the local legal kind of still on site, and and that was the start of it. So come 1897, it was the first time that it was officially, i.e. started paying our tax probably, making whiskey on the site. And as I say, we've grown ever since. In the 70s, we were actually the largest producer of Scotch whiskey in Scotland, funnily enough. We had about 23 stills here, and kind of obviously then the journey from the kind of 80s onwards towards a single malt has meant us go for a more of a quality over quantity kind of drive there as well, which has been hugely successful. And it's a journey we're still on, but as I say, it's fantastic. And fantastic as I keep coming back to the team here. You know, we talk about the history of it, and we've kind of got living history all around us here. We were lucky enough to have working with us in the visitor centre Emily, who is fifth generation of her family to work on site at the distillery here. So, as I say, that's not many industries in this day and age, and certainly not in UK that can boast that kind of thing. That, as I say, her dad and her uncle are still working on site now. So it's I just love that aspect of it, you know.
That's absolutely amazing. I love to hear that with really old Scotch distilleries. But I mean, in throughout the years, what has changed in terms of like the process? Is it still, are we still talking like the old days, hands-on? Are we talking about computers being installed and more of this kind of stuff, or where are we? Yeah,
it's interesting, you know, there is a couple of computers that we use upstairs in the mash house and then the still house as well. But really they're just there to gauge different aspects that we would have gauged using a gizmo or what you call it before, you know. So it really kind of helps, and it's a bit more accurate, but really we're still a very hands-on distillery, and I think that's one of the reasons the tours up here are so popular. You really do get that hands-on experience. You have to push past Rob as he's pushing barrels around in the fill-in store, or you know, it might be David in the still house, but David will always stop for a chat with you as well and tell you what he's up to that day. So you really get a great feel of that work in distillery here for each trip. No two kind of visits are the same, you know. I was chatting to one person that came back up and said during the August shutdown, we were moving around some of our stills, replacing and repairing, you know. So for some people on tour that day, got to see stills getting removed through the roof via a crane, you know, which is not quite the experience you'll get at every distillery anyway, but it certainly is up in Tomatin.
That's amazing. That sounds incredible. I need to come up one day for sure.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Talk to us. So we've spoken a bit about yourself. We also, what makes Tomatin special? What is the house character? How is that achieved in the maturation process, in the production?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in theory, we're a Highland distillery, but geographically we're quite close, and probably whiskey we're quite close to more of a Speyside, to be honest. You know, take our 12-year-olds, our best-selling dram, and typifies what we do very well. So it's a beautiful, soft, fruity, mellow, but complex whiskey. That's a combination of everything that we really do here. You know, from the water that we get from the burn that runs beside us here. You know, we're lucky enough to have a cooper and a cooperage on site as well. So you know, the work that Bart does in repairing and maintaining, and these beautiful casks that we source as well, you know, and it's just a beautiful old place, you know, the warehouses and whatnot as well. Just all that combination, as I say, adds to that very soft, very drinkable whiskies that we produce. Which,
you know, the 12 is absolutely that kind of the classic Tomatin style. But tonight we're drinking the 14, which is a cask whiskey, which for me on the nose instantly it would not describe as soft. There's a beautiful heaviness to it from that port cask, which is stunning. So it's interesting to see how that Tomatin character has taken his port cask. So, but talk to us a bit about the dram.
Yeah, so today we are very proud, very privileged to be talking about our 14-year-old, our port cask, as we were talking about there. So using a lot of the same processes that we use to make that beautiful, soft 12-year-old. In this case, we have used mostly ex-bourbon for the first, say, 12 or so years. And then we finish it not in a ruby cask that's probably more popular in the industry, but in a tawny pour cask. We're lucky enough to have some amazing friends across in Portugal at the Symington's estate who supply us with beautiful large kind of 620 litre pipes, casks. Some of them have been housing port for 70 years, which is just incredible. The history and the provenance on it is beautiful. So yeah, so what that leads to with finishing the port casks in these casks after being used for 70 years, a lot of the kind of wood flavors and whatnot have now probably long since been taken up by the port. So what is left is that beautiful, as I say, port that's rich in that berries and nuts and pecans, and as I say, yeah, you can really get that soft red fruits through it as well. As I say, ruby port finish would be a little bit red. It's got a beautiful tint to it, but the tawny certainly, as I say, leads it to more of that kind of beautiful browns with as I say, with that hint of pinkness. It's beautiful in here actually. When the sun comes through the windows and hits the bottles, you can really pick up that beautiful pinkness in the background. But yeah, huge popular one for us. Probably the most popular jam amongst the staff in here, which is an interesting one. You can always tell it's a good dram when all the team in here are drinking it.
I was on a tasting with Scott Adamson.
Absolutely.
And absolutely everybody on it agreed throughout the range. Everyone was saying this was their favourite one. So out of the range. So it's interesting, although I did try the Decades from, I can't remember what it was, and actually that one was my favourite.
Yeah, that's the one over, all that up there.
Yeah. We won't be trying that on this one. No,
unfortunately that one's long since finished either, so it would be great. But yeah, no, as I say, we're really proud, and in fact we've got a new Portuguese collection coming out a week on Monday, which features another similar one, a 15-year-old tawny port, and that one we've kind of pushed it even further. That one's probably been about 50-50, about 7 and a bit years and ex-bourbon and 7.5 years in a tawny port. So
wow, so
that one's so new, it's just come in, so I've not even tasted that one yet. So apologies, I can't give you more, but maybe for next time we can cover that one off.
Open it. So I'm just going to read out quite a few tasting notes because there are loads coming in. Royal Boinga, I detect berries, cherries, a bit of apple on the nose. Jassington saying very berry.
Yeah.
David Stanton, nose, port, red fruits, berries, vanilla, banana, and oak. Anthony Mullins, really juicy berries on the nose. Malcolm Tucker, I get some cereal, plenty of red berries and nutmeg on the nose. That's a good note, nutmeg. Steve Coleman Williams, strong, thick, creamy vanilla custard, leading to summer fruits, apricots and peaches. Gerard McNeely, toffee apples on the nose for me. That's a wonderful Halloween, October tasting note. Mikolai saying red berries again. That seems to be the reoccurring theme.
Yeah.
Everyone getting those beautiful, succulent red berry notes from this. Oak, vanilla, a bit of grape on the nose. Graham Lloyd Jones, crumbly custard, fruity, sweet pudding nose. David Stanton, palate sweet and creamy, port fruit, then some tropical and dark chocolate. Clive Hampton, I have a cold, so can't smell a thing, so I've gone straight to the tasting. Smooth milk chocolate and butter. Anthony Mullins saying like a Mr. Kipling Manor House cake. I don't know what that is.
No, me neither.
But
it sounds good.
It sounds good. There's definitely that kind of real kind of classic fruit cake on the nose.
Yeah, absolutely.
From like a Christmas cake. Graham Lloyd Jones, cakes with my granny in the 1980s. Obviously, I can't comment on that. I've tried to cakes. But that sounds good. I'm sure she made very good cakes. Steve Coleman Williams, palate thick, rich berries. Reminds me of malt loaf with a hint of cinnamon and the odd cherry. There are loads of notes coming in. Malcolm Tucker getting plenty of peppery oak spice, which finally gives way to bitter chocolate. Loads and loads of notes coming through. We do love your notes here at Pour and Sip. Richard Wingrove, I do put whiskey in my fruitcake sometimes, so there's a bit of an overlap with this. Definitely malt loaf. Green tea is green, has a lovely colour. Beautiful, isn't it? Says Steve Coleman Williams. Nice and rich. It is a really rich dram, which I love. It's also got a lovely waxy quality to it. And there's this lovely leather note for me on the nose as well, which is really lovely. I mean, for me, this is like, as we're approaching winter, it's definitely got that kind of vibe for me. This wouldn't be a summer dram for me, but it's absolutely kind of cold night, come home, kind of by the fire dram. It's lovely. Richard Wingrove, I've had, I've lost your comment. I had some of the Penderyn Portwood the other day. This one beats it out, I think. We'll have to try more of the Portwood later to double check. Neil Bolton, agree. Don't normally add water, but a few drops of this helped. Green tea is green, quite subtle fruit on the nose, but much oak these comments are going. There's so many of you coming in. They're just going off the page. They're much livelier on the front of the tongue. Would you add what water to this? Bottles at what are we bottles at here? 46%. Well, I personally think that a couple of drops of water would definitely bring out some of those fruitier notes on this particular dram. How about you, Martin? What would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, we always, being in a customer-facing role here on a daily basis, it's quite funny talking to customers and showing them just about adding a couple of teardrops of water. Some will put a horrified face to think that whiskey shouldn't be drank that way, but we try and demonstrate by having a sip beforehand, and then a couple of teardrops, and then looking for those profiles, looking how water. It's not about diluting it, changing those profiles, opening up the whiskey, really getting that water interacting with all the oils and whatnot in there, and what a difference it can make. We've got about 5 single cask exclusives up here as well that we sell, and especially with those with a single cask, what a difference it can make to some of them. Just a couple of teardrops there is fantastic.
Absolutely. Green Tea is Green saying, now that I've let it breathe a bit, the nose has deepened like a leather chair. I definitely get that vibe. Absolutely. So future-wise, we've got this 15-year-old coming out. When will we be able to get our hands on that? You've not even tasted it yet.
Yeah, that I've not even tasted yet. So that is the 17th of October, and that is a week on Monday for the Portuguese collection. So there's 3 different expressions that will be released for that one there. No pressure. I'm trying to furiously remember. So there's the cognac. You okay there?
It's just the my Amazon thing keeps the Alexa be big shush.
Sorry, no. So we have a muscatel and a cognac finishes as well coming out that day on the 17th. So it's a limited release there as well. So that's something we're very excited about. Other releases coming up in Tomatin. Well, we just actually had one on Friday. Not as one I prepared earlier. Not from our Tomatin single malt brand, but for another one we do our Kabokken.
Yes. We had that on Pour and Sip before. I can't remember what bottling it was, but we had that Kabokken on Pour and Sip.
So this is our brand new 15-year-old first age statement for Kabokken. Full maturation, Oloroso, and it's beautiful. This one I have tasted. And as I say, we're putting any Kabokken, as you say, obviously you guys, and I'm sure a lot of our folk watching tonight are probably aware of it, but there's still a lot of people out there that aren't. So we're really passionate about putting Kabokken in people's hands, and you can really see their face light up. It is a peated whiskey, but one with only a light smokiness that you'll find out at the end rather than full on in your face. And that new one, that's not going to last long. There anyway. It's only 3,000 bottles, so that's a fantastic one we're really proud of.
There you go. They get that one quick if you want it. But I also might be getting this one. And remember, guys, you will get discounts in the Pour and Sip store if you want any of these drams from tonight. So please head there. Your Uncle Vanya, bit of 90% dark chocolate with this brings out the berry and dry tawny berry oak even further. Absolutely, dark chocolate would be wonderful with this. I assume I might save a little bit. Because I've got some here for the last part of my dram. With a bit of water getting Jaffa cakes on the palate, lots of orange marmalade, says Gerard McNeely. Now you're making, your Uncle Vanya saying we had the original Kabokken. Green Tea is Green, yes, definitely a winter dram. Reminds me a little of my great-grandparents' house in Yorkshire. And lastly, Graham Lloyd Jones just done a taste comparison with the Pender in Portwood, for science. Very good. I like that. I can confirm that both are splendid drams, but surprisingly different. Awesome. That's wonderful stuff. It's been lovely to talk to you, Martin, and that is a superb dram.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I will invite Kristy back at some point if she's there. Yes, here she is.
Here. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Did you manage to have a sip of that one?
I did indeed have a sip. I think Portwood is a really interesting one because sometimes I think it can get a reputation of a bit too much, but I feel like this is really beautifully integrated, and it's just absolutely delicious. That would be my 2-second tasting note.
It's the only tasting note you need, really. Delicious. Was it delicious or not?
Yeah, but a treat indeed for the palate.
Absolute treat to start off with, I have to say.
Indeed. Well,
Yes.
yeah, thank you, Martin. Are you able to hang around to the end and join us in a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. With pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So if you've got any questions for Martin, still lingering on, keep them up your sleeves and we'll get him back about 8:30.
See you later. Thanks, Martin.
Cheers.
Bye. Oh, what a start to the evening.
What a start.
A flavoursome extravaganza, I think, and it's only going to continue, which is very exciting.
That is exciting.
Let's find our next guest. We'll bring him in. This is Matthew from GlenWyvis.
Yes.
May anyone that was saying it right. Here he is. Hello, Matthew. How are you doing?
Hello. Excellent. Yes, no, that was right this time.
Yes, got it right this time. Thank you. I will need to be on GlenWyvis alert if I ever say them wrong. There'll have to be a klaxon that goes off to correct me. But yes, thank you so much for joining us. I'll say bye to Andy for now, but he'll be tasting.
Have fun. I'll be.
I always cut him off on purpose. Don't worry. We always do it. And he can't.
A power play.
I've got the controls. Yeah, I know. But a couple of times when he is in charge, he gets me back. It's all good. How are you doing today, Matthew? Tell us all about your day so far, because you have a very exciting job.
Yeah, so my day is always a little bit different. I am the distillery manager at GlenWyvis Distillery. Although I always preface that by saying, like, we only have 5 employees, so it always sounds maybe a little bit grander than it is. We all wear a lot of different hats, and my job is always changing. But I did run home, so instead of being in Dingwall, I'm now doing this from a very makeshift Zoom studio, I guess, in our house in Drumnadroghit. It was a bit of a last minute thing. I've got a t-shirt wrapped around my light up here.
Well, it's looking fabulous. So it's doing the trick.
It's a diffuser, apparently, according to Google.
Yeah, I mean, I have done that, but maybe I should. Perhaps I should. I'm learning every day. But yes, so tell us a bit about you and how you got into making whiskey, because yeah, GlenWyvis has got a very interesting story of its own. But before we get onto that, tell us about you.
Yeah. Oh, I kind of know you asked this question, and I still feel horribly ill-prepared to try and condense this down, because it is a bit of a long story. But
we're here for it.
I'll have a dram while I'm doing it. But so despite my indecipherable accent, I am Scottish. I was born in Scotland, grew up on the West Coast. And then in 2001, my family and I moved to Seattle, Washington. My dad had got offered a job in a big tech company. It was like one of those too good to be true things. I ended up moving out there, stayed there for a long time, started a fledgling career as a chef. That was going quite well. But then in Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, around about 2008, they legalized distilling. And it was really downhill from there.
Okay.
There was a lot of startup distilleries. They'd seen the craft beer movement in the Pacific Northwest really take off, and they thought craft distilling was going to be kind of the next logical step. I managed to kind of wag my way into a job there, just because being a chef, I was used to long hours and cleaning things. Yeah. And so I actually started at a very small place making apple vodka and grappa.
That's really exciting. And actually, as an aside, before we get into the whiskey, fruit brandies and fruit vodkas can be incredible.
They are fantastic, and especially in Washington, where we had we had a big wine industry. Like Woodinville was kind of known as the Napa Valley of Washington up there. So a lot of the wineries would just have their spent grapes, their spent must, just sitting around outside. They would go to fertilizer. And so if you had a pickup truck, you could just drive around, take it off their hands. Some wineries were doing a really light first pressing. So there's so much juice and so much alcohol left in those grapes that if you could get it into a pot still quick enough, it was free alcohol, really. Fantastic stuff.
That's very, very cool. So you fell into distilling there, and clearly you fell in love with it. What took you to Scotland and Scotch whiskey?
So that was actually GlenWyvis in particular. I don't know how much you know about the distillery, but the initial fundraising actually came from a crowdfunder. Like it was actually ended up being one of the most successful crowdfunders in the UK, and still has been. We raised about £1.2 million, I think. people invested anywhere from £250 to 10,000. A lot of them came from the Inverness area, Dingwall particular, but some of them were homesick expats like me. My mum had connections up in Tame. She'd been to high school up there, so she had bought me some shares in the distillery as sort of like a birthday present.
I love it.
Got my t-shirt and everything, and I signed me up for the newsletters, so I was getting monthly sort of updates about how the distillery was doing. And one of those newsletters said that the distillery manager was looking to move on, and the hiring process for a new one was starting. So this was during the COVID pandemic, so me and my wife were already making some decisions about what were our priorities in life and where we were going to raise the kids and all that kind of stuff. And I think the stars just aligned, threw my hat in the ring, not really expecting anything. And I think 6 months later, I was on a plane.
That's so exciting. I have very many questions. I'm only going to ask one because otherwise we'll have a deep dive into distilling different things and we've got whiskey to taste. But how was it changing from essentially working with fruit to working with grains all through the distillery?
So I also missed out a big part there where I also spent about 7 years making bourbon and rye in between.
Right.
So I went from fruit.
A very easy jump then.
I went from fruit to corn to barley. And it's amazing the similarities and it's amazing the differences as well. I think that the similarities are always that you're trying to showcase your raw ingredient. If it's fruit brandy, you're trying to showcase what makes that special. With bourbon, you're trying to showcase the sweetness of corn. With rye, you're trying to showcase the spiciness of rye. With barley, you're trying to get either that's that maltiness coming through. You're never trying to make something different than what you started with.
Yeah.
All you're trying to do is respect the ingredients that you're starting with. The process can be very, very different, but the philosophy, I think, is the same.
Incredible. And before we do move on to whiskey, and I told you I was going to be nosy and have to rein myself in, which is your favorite to work with when making spirits?
I still have a real soft spot for rye. There's a lot of history behind it, both in Scotland and Ireland and the eastern coast of the United States. It's sort of like the middle child of the grains, right? It's very low yielding. It's tough to grow. You don't really use it for anything other than bread, I guess, for human consumption or alcohol. But when you do it right, it takes a lot of work, and that work pays off.
Yes. I mean, we've got an incredible rye coming up last fall with Kyrö, but I think it is incredible. And also bread and alcohol, two of my favorite things. But GlenWyvis, got it right again, I hope. Wyvis, I'll get there.
I don't have the clacks and sound effects, sorry.
I know, we need it. This is actually a relatively new Scotch distillery. So I believe that spirit first flowed in 2015. Is that right?
So 2015 was when we started fundraising for it. So that's when the GlenWyvis name came out of somebody's imagination onto a page. We raised the money off of the back of not only the crowdfunding, but also we contracted gin from Shetland Reel, who are still going. So they basically created a gin for us, and we put the GlenWyvis name on it. And so when people gave us £250, they got their certificate and a little bottle of gin that said GlenWyvis. We hadn't made it because we didn't have a distillery, but it at least got the name out there.
Yeah.
Construction of the distillery was finished at the end of 2017. First spirit came off the still in 2018.
And that's one of the ones we've got in our tasting glasses now is a 2018 vintage, for want of a better word.
Yes. So we are doing vintage releases, and this is some of the very first barrels that we filled.
This is very exciting. So talk us through, I'll get on to some tasting notes in a minute, but talk us through what you've done to get this whiskey.
So the story behind this one is actually quite, again, it's going to be a bit long, so I'm sorry. I'm trying to condense this down.
The more the merrier. Bring it on.
It's genuinely interesting, I hope. So Duncan, the distillery manager before me, he's an industry vet. He has 30 years in Scottish distilleries. And his really remit was to lay down some really, really high quality single malt. And he took sort of like a large company approach to it. Not to say that that's bad or good, or it's just sort of like what he knew. So where a lot of young distilleries were putting down peated whiskey, STR, heavy sherry casks, wine finishes, things that were supposed to sort of like come out at 3 or 4 years old and have some body or fullness to them. He was aiming for 8 years, 10 years. We have a lot of refill hogsheads, first fill bourbon, few sherries, but nothing too crazy, no real crazy finishes. So very sort of like standard, old school, traditional. And then I came in during the middle of COVID, and I was a little bit more comfortable with young whiskey, just coming from a background, especially showcasing something that was a bit maltier, a bit grainier. And also just the COVID pandemic, in all honesty, being a community benefit society, we don't have 10 years of funding already laid out for us. So COVID kind of did move our whiskey release schedule up a bit. I'm not going to say that we're releasing it earlier than we wanted to, but we're definitely releasing it earlier than we thought we were going to.
Yeah.
Is that an important distinction? I think that's an important distinction.
I think so. I think so.
And so I came in and it was sort of like looking at the cask makeup that we had in the warehouse, and really was taken back at the flavor of some of these casks at literally 3 years, and how much potential they had. So going through them, we had a fairly limited selection. We had probably 80 barrels to choose from, a mixture of first fill bourbon, few sherry hogsheads, a lot of refill hogsheads as well. And it was all a matter of sort of like putting them together in the right ratios to try and showcase the things that were special about it.
Amazing. And this is so exciting because having looked at some of the tasting notes, I'll get to in just a second, I had a little nose myself. It feels really quite delicate and quite precise. You're so correct when you say that a lot of the younger distilleries are going booming flavour, get it out young, quite big and round and bouncy. And there's nothing wrong with that. This just feels really very elegant. And I'm very excited to taste it.
Oh, thank you. I would hesitate to say that's what we're going for, but that's kind of what we were going for.
It's amazing. I'm going to shout out some tasting notes. Sorry if I miss yours. We love all of your tasting notes and we do read them all. I'm just going to rattle through as many as possible. So a remark first from Mikolai. Should we all chip in and buy a distillery? I'm in. Yes. Someone get that going and I'm part of it. So Malcolm Tucker on the nose. Floral notes. Peach and apricot and light sweet honey. Plastic fantastic. Lovely nose. Fruits. Delicate floral. Neil Bolton. Slightly herbal honey on the nose. Uday, a new name, welcome if you're new. Green apple in the mouth. Your Uncle Vanya, it's replying to Steve Conway. I love that. I was going to say, chewing on a fresh barley stem while passing the field and snatching it illegally. I love it. That is a great one. Jazzington, spicy and herbal with a bourbon cask note for sure. Ali C, charred peaches and vanilla ice cream flamed with whiskey. Clive Hampton, very delicate and light, unusual. I'll rattle through a handful more. On the palate, Malcolm Tucker, in contrast to delicate nose, the palate has a lot of peppery spice and the underlying taste of banana. We're going to get to that. Richard Wingrove is talking about spice on the finish as well. A drop of water, still ace. Plastic Fantastic's gone for the water, which is always a good idea. Always taste your whiskey with some water if you fancy it. Just don't overwater. You can always add more, but you can't take it out. And then P. Barrett, palate Calvados and pear drops. Light and refreshing, will make a very decent aperitif, I reckon. I like that assessment.
Yeah, Calvados, pear drops, that kind of like, kind of trying to find other words for just estery, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Explain what esters are for anyone who that might be an unfamiliar term to.
So esters are volatile compounds that come out of fermentation, usually as a byproduct of the actual fermentation. So when you're yeast basically is eating sugar and creating alcohol, but then as a byproduct, sometimes things eat that alcohol and then create esters out of them. And generally, rule of thumb, but every single distillery will have something that's a little bit different. The longer you ferment and the longer you let it sit, the more that you can create those flavors. So think about like sour beers and that kind of just fruity funk.
Yeah. So good. So essentially, I guess esters are the stuff that makes certain flavors, fruit being one of them.
Yeah, that's perfect. That was a lot more simple than my explanation, sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And how long do you ferment for to get this like real kind of like rich, kind of like I would say an elegant funk?
Oh, I like that. Elegant funk should go on the box, I think, for the next batch. So We do a combination of long and short. Longs get us the esters, and then shorts get us sort of like that grainy maltiness. So we do right now we're doing 4 longs of 144 hours, which is about 6 days, and then 1 short, which is 92 hours.
Thank you for doing the maths. I was finding that very challenging. And
I hope that's right.
No, well, someone will correct us, I'm sure. We've got a really interesting question here, if you're ready to get geeky, from Steve Common Williams. What is meant by, quote, volatile compounds? In this regard, as my military background makes me think unstable explosives, I'm assuming that's not correct.
That's probably more correct than than you might want to think, actually. So when you put your wash into the still and you boil it, what you're doing, the distillation process.
Your wash is like your beer after fermenting, right?
Yeah. So it's after everything is done, the yeast has created the alcohol, and now you're left with a mixture of water, alcohol, and usually you have like a little bit of solids in there, not a huge amount, but some solids. You put it into a still and you boil it. And all of the compounds that make up that beer, all of the things in that wash, have a slightly different boiling point. So when you start to heat it up...
Oh, I love it. That's how I talk.
My enthusiasm.
All the time. I have to have a wide berth between me and the screen.
That probably shattered everyone's eardrums. I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay still?
Yes, absolutely. An unstable explosive, perhaps. A demonstration right there.
So doing it with less hand motions, when you boil it, you're basically stepping through the boiling points and things start evaporating at different rates. So it's not like if you have ethanol, which it boils at 78.53 degrees Celsius, and water at 100 degrees Celsius. If you heat it up to 78.3, you don't just get ethanol and leave the water behind. That would be too easy. That would mean you can make vodka in a kettle at home. What happens is that the ethanol comes off at a slightly faster rate than the water does. So if you have a 10% alcohol solution and you boil it, the vapor that comes off might have 30% alcohol in it because the alcohol has come off a little bit faster. Condense that, redistill it, and the alcohol will come off faster again. And suddenly you've got like 60% alcohol, and that's double distilling. Condense it, do it again, you're triple distilling, and the alcohol goes higher and higher and higher. Now, the volatile components are anything that boils, really. The solids, the yeasts, the proteins, the fat, the sludge, that stays behind in the still. And the volatile components, the things that can boil, turn into gas, and get condensed, go into your low wines, your faints, or your spirit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always think the more volatile bits are the bits that have got more energy. It doesn't take as much to like wind them up and get them up the still.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. They are a little bit unstable. They want to get out and be free. And
people like think of them. They're volatile. They're people who get angry very quickly. They just bubble up that still. Doesn't take very much. Another question. This time from Graham Lloyd Jones. He's after a little bit more detail about the casks going into this one.
Yes, so it is 60% first fill bourbon, and first fill bourbon cask is one that's been used for bourbon once and then used again for Scotch. Yep. Coming from a bourbon industry is always kind of interesting because when you talk about a first fill bourbon, there's nothing that says that that barrel was used for 4 years or 6 years or 10 years. Like when I go through the first fill bourbons that get delivered to us, some of them are from... I should probably say an unnamed Tennessee distillery. So throw a dartboard for that one.
Yeah.
And those are like 4 years, 1 day. That's that's when you don't have to put an age statement on bourbon anymore. Legally, as long as it's over 4 years, you don't have to say how old it is. Bourbon's a little bit different in that if it's younger than 4 years, you are forced to put an age statement on it to tell people how young it is exactly. So as soon as you hit that 4-year mark, it could be anything, and you can do a non-age statement release. But I go through the distillery and sometimes I'll find one that's like a 12-year-old wild turkey. And a 12-year-old, a barrel that's been used for 12 years is very, very different from a barrel that's been used for 4 years. So when we were picking the first fill bourbons for these, I was specifically looking for the ones that had been used lighter. I was specifically looking for unnamed Tennessee whiskey barrels. And actually, if you look at the box in the back, it specifically says first fill Tennessee whiskey rather than first fill bourbon, because they are two different things.
That's so interesting. This came up in a conversation I was having, I think, last week with the folks at Deanston Distillery, and they were telling me exactly the same thing about how casks behave differently, not just what's been in it before, but how long it's been in it before, and also sometimes the ABV of what's been in it before as well, which is really interesting. So not all bourbon casks are created equal, not all sherry casks are created equal, which is so fascinating, and just gives you, I guess, from flavour perspective, so many more variables.
Yeah, it's really like you can add 5 more columns to your Excel spreadsheet already. And it's just make it as complicated as you want. The refill, one of the really unusual things that we did, or at least one that I think is fairly unusual, that was against what my initial sort of gut reaction would have been, was actually 15% refill hogshead in there. Generally, you do not think about using a refill barrel for a 3-4-year-old whiskey. A refill barrel is supposed to be a long-term investment because of the light oak influence. But what we were finding was that our new make, because of those long fermentations, just has such this sort of like distinctive character that if you put a little bit of refill hogshead into a makeup, you will recognize it as a GlenWyvis whiskey right now. You're not going to confuse it with any other distillery, really. And I think that was really important for me in particular, is that when we come out with a batch next year and a batch the year after that and start following this vintage release, if we're able to put a little bit of refill hogshead into every single release, we're guaranteed to have this sort of, it's a distillery character, it's a house style that's going to come through in every single one. So next year's vintage will be a different cask makeup. But if you like this one, hopefully you will like the next one as well. It will just be a little bit of a spin on it.
Amazing. This one's very popular. And just before we move on, just thinking about time, the rest of it's Oloroso sherry. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So that is all Oloroso. We do have Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso, but this one was actually, we didn't have any Pedro Jimenez in 2018, so that decision was kind of made for me.
Yes, that was an easy one. Not too much debate to do then. I'm just going to rattle through some more tasting notes. They're coming in thick and fast. Green tea is green. I'm getting sponge cake off the nose now. Fruity jam and vanilla, gorgeous. In Jambo Rain, it's got a real green fruit freshness, sharpness about it, but then the peppery spiciness comes in. Finish is a bit too drying for me. Malcolm Tucker, my second glass is now empty. These whiskies are going down nicely. I like it. Just remember, sip, don't gulp. Green tea is good. I have to say, it's GlenWyvis is growing on me. Real buoyant. They are quite smooth and slip down the gullet as easy as those volatiles go up the still. I like it. And then last but not least, from Steve Common Williams replying to Green tea is green. It's one that deserves attention, not just an I fancy a quick dram, which is, I think, very...
Thank you.
It's fun to dig into it. Thank you so much for talking us through in so much detail. So, a young distillery, GlenWyvis, you've hinted a little bit about what we can expect to see next. But yeah, what in the short term might we see from you guys? What should we keep our tasting glasses at the ready for?
Right now, we are looking into potentially a single cask release, which for me is a little bit scary because when we do a batch and you blend it all together, you have a little bit more control over it. Like you can smooth out a rough edge and you can like do a lot of experiments. A single cask release, which is what I've always loved about bourbon as well, is just that is it. That's what went in. That's what came out. There's nowhere to hide. And I'm just trying to find the right cask in the warehouse that is going to be the special one. That'll be our very first one.
The literal chosen one.
Yes.
The literal chosen one. This has been incredible, Matthew. Thank you so much for going into so much detail, particularly nerding out with us about the fermentation, the esters and the stills, and then the cask types. It's been so helpful and so brilliant. And are you able to hang around for another sort of 10, 15 minutes?
I am, yeah. No, thank you. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Yeah. So any further questions on fermentation, distillation, GlenWyvis, whiskey in general, keep hold of them and we'll come back in a second. But on that note, I'm going to bring Andy back if he is there. Hello, Andy. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How are you guys?
I'm really, really good.
Yeah, it was a fascinating chat. Thank you so much, Matthew. It was really, really interesting. And that was a lovely dram.
It was a very lovely dram. I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'll zip you off, but we'll catch you shortly. See you in a bit. Amazing. And then there was 2 of us for 3 drams, Andy.
Will there not be 3 of us?
No, I don't think there will be 3 of us. Sadly, our third guest isn't with us this evening, but that's fine. We move. More whiskey for the rest of us, you could say.
Yes.
Doesn't quite work. We've all got the same amount of drams. But so 3 we're going to taste now. A quick update for the order. We're going to do a shallow dive. Not that you should dive in shallow water, but a splash into Glencairn, and then Masthouse, and then Kyrö last of all. So Fettercairn. What am I talking about? Andy? It's gone to my head.
Very glass-like. The Glencairn. It's
Indeed. So the things our guest was going to be from Fettercairn, and the stuff that I wanted to talk about with them, which I'll unpick with you a little bit, Andy, and anyone else who wants to join in, because I don't really have the answers. I just have my interview questions, so we can surmise together something that's very, very, very cool about Fettercairn. And I wish I knew how to share a screen on this like fancy setup we've got here at Pour and Sip, are the spirit stills. So I will do my best to describe them. They are like, the onion kettle shape that we see at lots of Scotch distilleries for pot still distillation. But what they have are these really amazing cooling ring things that sort of sit on the neck of them. And it literally flows cool water down the outside of the copper and then gets caught. And I have not seen them in real life. I really, 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 really want to see them in real life. Desperate to, because of the patina on the copper and also the flavour of the whiskey. You look puzzled, Andy.
Oh, do any other distilleries have these? Sorry.
Not that I know of. They might do. But I'm just going to literally do it now and encourage everyone to do the same. If you look at Fettercairn stills, and you might have to put cooling ring in. Anyone watching at home later, do it yourself as well.
They'll probably this bit.
Yeah, or you'll fast forward this bit. But yeah, Google image search it, and I will do my best to describe it to you now. So yeah, literally on the neck of the still, and this is why I was hoping our guest would be here to do a deep dive. Yeah, literally water pouring down the outside. So you've got all the steam, you've got obviously the copper changing colour from the water contact. There's a section that's got a little bit Statue of Liberty-esque. And it just looks extraordinary and so atmospheric. And I know the theory behind it, which I will regale you of now in my very simple terms. Maybe one to put to Matthew, the actual distiller, when he's back later. It's all about creating this thing called reflux. So the idea being that you've got a bigger temperature variation. So it's hot at the bottom where you've got your heat source, cooler at the top, particularly with the cooling rings. And that means that the volatile bits, as we discussed just now, they go up to the top, but then it gets cold, so they fall back down and go up to the top again and then fall back down. All like to do with like getting, I guess you'd call it, reflux, rectification. She's going to the deepest depths of her knowledge now. And that in theory results in a much lighter spirit. And I've not seen them anywhere else. Have you, Andy? Have you ever seen them anywhere?
Not, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. I mean, I do like Fettercairn. It's that kind of very tropical fruit kind of spirit that they have. I've been lots of tastings with them, and this is just classic. And they're interesting because they sit in the White and Mackay portfolio, and they've really put a lot of work into it. I think Fettercairn is kind of like the shining light, to be honest, along and the kind of really authentic one nowadays, in comparison to the others like Dalmore and stuff. But I mean, I love it. Unicairn, as Nikolai says, or your Uncle Vanya saying Glenfettercairn.
Yes, exactly. Good copy.
Steve Coleman Williams saying, would they not just turn green?
Yes, you need to look at it. Yes, you do need to look at it.
I'm going to do that now.
They're a very like bluey grey green. Like it's exactly that. Hence the Statue of Liberty comment. It's really, really cool. Really, really cool. Nerding out about the stills now. But Steve Coleman Williams, we want to create reflux. Yes. In this situation, yes, we do.
Yes.
We like it.
Interesting. We don't always.
Any parents have a thing with reflux, don't they? That's annoying.
I can't find it. Sorry, what was it? Cooling ring.
Yeah, Fettercairn Stills cooling ring. Ali C believes me. Credit to Kristy. Having just Googled them, that is super nerdy, but also super cool. I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
But
very atmospheric.
Very atmospheric, exactly. And I would
propose,
should we do a pour and sip field trip? I think the Fettercairn still should be on the itinerary. But what you end up with because of this, we'll get back to actual tasting now. It's something very light, very kind of nutty. The tropical fruits that we said, I get so much citrus. Ice cream vibes are in the notes that I think our Jess would have written. And yeah, white chocolate. Like, it's very fresh, very light. And you're completely correct, Andy. They've done so much work on the brand itself. I think it's a treasure.
I think it's a treasure in that portfolio, which is like for the real whiskey lovers. Fettercairn, they've really put a lot of work into it. Malcolm Tucker said he had some reflux on Tuesday after too much Wolfburn cask strength. You have to think of it as like Gaviscon for whiskey. You have to think about it. Anthony Mullins, definitely pineapple cube boiled sweets on the nose. It's that absolute tropical. That is the absolute kind of guaranteed Fettercairn kind of house character, is that tropical fruit note. Neil Bolton is really, really apparent in the new make Spirit, if you've ever had a chance to try that from Fettercairn. Neil Bolton, very coconutty. Not sure about this one. Interesting. You don't have to be sure about any of them. Gerard McNeely, pineapple cubes. Bob Byers, very cool. Talking about the cooling rings. Cooling rings. Plastic fantastic. Agree with pineapple and coconut. Steve Coleman Williams, is this a fruit salad in a dram? Banana, plums, pineapple with a hint of bitter gooseberry. Is it gooseberry or gooseberry?
I would say gooseberry.
You'd say gooseberry. Okay, cool.
Doesn't mean I'm correct. Doesn't mean I'm correct.
DS007, nose, vanilla, peach, pears. Mikolai, almost on the nose like a... Don't know what that is.
I don't know either. Tepache? Do you enlighten us?
Yes. Jared Manili, coconut. Malcolm Tucker, oak and plenty of pears, followed by a warmth of ginger. Finish black tea and citrus. Lovely notes, those ones, Malcolm. Real bonga, citrus fruit on the nose. Lemony. Absolutely.
Yeah. And just one final remark before we move on to yours, Andy. You want to take us through the grain of whiskey. Can you believe that it's you talking to us about grain and not me?
It feels wrong, doesn't it, really?
But one of the reasons that these guys have chosen to use American oak ex-bourbon is to really let that distillery character shine through. They're not trying to mess about with it, not really trying to mask it. It's all about celebrating the spirit style, which I love.
Yeah, and they haven't been doing like much in the way of cask finishing or really using kind of weird casks and stuff. It's like that's very much what the character of Fettercairn is, and that's kind of where it sits. It's really nice. As Graham Lloyd Jones says, pina colada. Absolutely.
Yes. Get that man a prize pina colada for that tasting.
Yes, absolutely. What are we going on to next?
We are doing the Malt Masthouse. I keep saying Malt. Indeed, Masthouse.
Masthouse grain whiskey from the Copper Rivet Distillery.
This is one down in the southeast. We've got an English whiskey right here.
It is. We have an English whiskey from Chatham, Kent, which was located in a former pump house in the Royal Naval Dockyard in Chatham, Kent. And it opened in 2016, so it's still brand new. It had been a building that had laid derelict, but it was spotted by a guy called Matthew Russell, who was having a picnic over the River Medway at Upnor Castle. And the following Monday, he drove down to Chatham and discovered it was for sale and bought the site. Just like that, as you do. He just went down there and go, I'll have that, and bought it. And now it's a whiskey distillery. They already have a vodka, 2 gins, and a Dockyard gin. And they're releasing their own whiskey as single malt as well. The kind of thing that's kind of interesting about them is they're really focusing on English grains. So all the barley, rye, wheat as the brands are using is grown on a nearby Isle of Sheppey. And they're really committed to employment in the area and farms in general. So this particular whiskey has something called, it follows the rules of something called the Invicta Whiskey Charter.
Tell me about it.
They have made up. Now it is huge. I have to say, I went online. I was going, oh yeah, I'll read what that is out. No, because it is a lot of information of rules that they're kind of sticking to. But the real interesting thing regarding this particular whiskey and what it's that the spirit must be made with grains grown in England from within 50 miles of the distillery and the water source.
That's very, very cool. So we're kind of, in a sense, they don't own the land they're growing on. It's not really true grain to glass whiskey, but the spirit of it, I feel, is that they're trying to be as local as possible, local employment.
That's exactly it. They're calling it hero to glass.
A what? Hero to glass.
Yeah.
I think I like it.
But yeah, anyway, no, I think it's really cool. I think that's championing English produce, English grains as well, which is something we don't often see. Let's say so, and again, this is a single grain whiskey, so from the one distillery, and we've got varietals of barley, wheat, and corn in here. Rye, sorry, in this one.
I like it. I like it. And a quick note on English whiskey in general before we move on. These are the ones we're sort of speed tasting through while Andy has a look at the comments. I have done a small, I was about to say deep dive, but no, a paddle this week into a bit of an argument brewing, shall we say, in English whiskey, which I love. I love a bit of whiskey gossip, a bit of bickering, a bit of infighting. Someone should make a soap opera for the whiskey industry, I think, sometimes. But this is actually quite a serious thing. So the English Whiskey Guild is up and running, and what they're proposing is that in a similar way, not the same rules, but a similar way, that you have the legislation that makes single malt Scotch what it is. So, minimum 3 years, like double pot still distillation, all of these things. There's more and more, obviously. They're trying to establish a single thing for English whiskey. The trouble / massive upside and positive of English whiskey is that because it's grown up so organically with so many different philosophies and perspectives, it's very difficult to define it. And where the wheels came off this week is that I'm just outside Bristol right now, a distillery just around the corner from here called Circumstance, who had been using stainless steel stills, but with loads and loads of copper in the neck of them to get a lot of that, like we mentioned earlier, reflux, those like vapors to all interact with each other, and they're getting the copper interaction there. Their whiskey, with this current rule of only using copper pot stills, they wouldn't be allowed to call their whiskey like English single malt. So they're, in my view, correctly up in arms about that. But I'd be interested to hear what everyone else thinks.
Who's up in arms? Sorry, the distillery are, because they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, because they wouldn't be able to call it that. But it is interesting because, I mean, do we need to have broader regulations in general? Do we want to pigeonhole whiskies to be a certain style? I don't know. I
think with English whiskey still finding its feet, really, as well, being that it's not exactly been around for as long. And I don't, but I mean, something like, I think it's that thing of like, you don't want to pigeonhole things, in my opinion, right now, and say that all English whiskey has to be this and has to be made in this specific way. It doesn't quite have the history of Scotch. But there also has to be some kind of legislation so it has a place of provenance and people go, oh, that's an English whiskey. So it's a bit of a catch-22. You probably could argue it both ways. Yeah, and I think the other thing that's interesting is as English whiskey grows, which I really believe it will, this Masthouse grade is a great example of why English whiskey should be growing. I think it's thoroughly delicious. You'll get people springing up in other markets calling, like we've seen what happened in Japan. We won't go into that, where other than this very quick explainer, Japanese whiskey not being made in Japan, being labelled as Japanese whiskey, when actually it's a blend of Scotch and Japanese whiskey. Not all of them, just some. And you don't want that to happen with English whiskey. So I think something needs to happen, but I think people need to go back and look at the definitions a bit more. Well, they've kind of, this Invicta whiskey chart is kind of working on all of those kind of things. If they're kind of almost trying to make it for themselves, like a set of guidelines and rules, not specifically for English whiskey, but for themselves to make a truly English product. So, yeah. It's cool. Right. I'd recommend going and reading that. Yeah. But there's lots of notes. There's lots. You're sorry if I'm interrupting you. You're distorting, not distorting. There's some kind of lag. Oh, okay. Am I back? Yeah, you are, but it's like you're blurring, and then it's fine. It just looks like I'm drunk and I can't see, but I'm not. David Stanton, Masthouse Nose, vanilla, honey, and sugar bananas, green and red apple, lemon and fruity toffee. Your Uncle Banyan being biased, being a single grain lover, just like Kristy, just like our Kristy. But that's in my basket now. David Stanton, chocolate and cinnamon, and at the end some oil. Neil Bolton, that's actually really nice. I love that reaction. That's actually really nice. If you read it like that, it's actually really nice. Like I wasn't expecting it to be. Mikolai, very interesting colour. Your Uncle Vanya loves Kristy nerding. We'll go back and rewatch. Plastic Fantastic Nose is great on this. Still finding my is good. Ali C, harsh next to others, doesn't even come close to the Cameron Big 27-year-old we had some time ago. I guess that's mostly down to aging. Yeah, I didn't really see how long this had been aged for. It didn't really say. This seems quite young and hasn't lost its vodka edge. Well, Anthony Mullins, if you can get English butter shortbread, then this is it. Loving this. David Stanton, vanilla lingers on a chocolate, ginger, and some malt. Not for me. Well, just to echo Ali C's very complimentary words about the Cameron Bridge 27-year-old,
that is up there. Probably I can't really pick a favourite whiskey ever, but it's a contender. It's incredible, that one that we had before. Do you?
Sorry, the one we had, yeah.
Yeah,
It
it was
a
amazing.
like that. Really, it was a wonderful, wonderful whiskey for sure. This is definitely not 27 years old.
No, sadly not. But we move. And we move on to our final dram of the day, which we are going all the way to Finland for now. So
Yeah, I love these guys.
Me too. They are so great. We've had Kyrö on here before, as Andy said, possibly one of our very first ever guests, which is amazing. I love this distillery. I love the philosophy behind it. I think the folks are amazing. I think they essentially, as the story goes, and I believe it to be true, because apparently there is one sauna in Finland for every 2 people. There are almost as well saunas everywhere, basically. The idea for Kyrö came from them all hanging out in a sauna, this group of friends chilling out, chatting about their day. And similar to, I can't remember who it was said earlier, should we just start a distillery? They were like, shall we start a distillery? And they did. And the rest is history. The rest is in our tasting glass now. Kyrö, they are based in a place called Kyrö. It's about halfway up Finland. It's really flat there, interestingly. And that part of the world is really known for its like rye agriculture. Everything is rye, as we mentioned earlier. Bread, rye, it's just everything. And so their whiskies are all 100% rye. Copper pot stills, more still chat. And what is really different with this one, and I don't think I have ever tasted, I say this very boldly, please someone correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I've come across another smoky rye whiskey that I have encountered. I'm sure that there are some.
There's always going to be one person who's going to actually.
There's always one. So this, they don't call it peated, they call it wood smoke. But what I understand they've done with it is that they have literally put the rye, the grain in the barn, and then use the same sort of wood chips that you use to like fire up a sauna to literally smoke them through. Which I know peating is still smoking, but that's a very precise way of doing it. So yeah, they've smoked them. I've got it down on my notes, the type of wood. Elderwood. So very, very, yeah. I mean, I'm not Finnish. That might mean something to somebody more than me. But yeah, so I like it. I feel like.
I love this nose.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? It's a very different kind of smoke from like what we're familiar with in Scotch.
Yeah, it's not got that it's not got that kind of the sea air kind of smoke. It's not an Islay type of smoke. There is a medicinal element to it that I'm getting, or like a herbaceous kind of element. Yeah. I'm getting it's more like that kind of Highland if it was going to be a peat, that kind of much more heathery kind of smoke. But then it's really woody, and there's this kind of pine note as well, like Christmas pine kind of note. And the rye is really just honestly, this nose is absolutely wonderful.
I feel like it's like smoked rosemary when you're making your roasties.
Rosemary is that absolutely 100% the one.
I love it. And I've just glanced up and seen a tasting there, which we'll go through all of them in a sec. But Graham Lloyd Jones is like, it's like new leather shoes. I'm like, yes, it is.
Oh, that palate. It's weird.
Yeah.
All in a good way. I love weird, by the way. I love trying whiskey that's weird, whether I like it or not. But this is...
I sipped it earlier and it was kind of rubbery on the palate. Have another little sip now. Andy, do you want to read some taste notes? Well, I'm going to attempt to answer Malcolm Tucker's question because I thought it was elder, but I've just written it and seen it written as alder. So I'm going to do a Google.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either way. I'm trying to work out where we stopped with the English whiskey. Real Boinger, vanilla and gingerbread on the palate with a licorice finish. Lovely. Neil Bolton, I wasn't expecting it, but pleasantly surprised and could be a basket option. Okay, sorry. Graham Lloyd Jones, Kyrö knows like new leather shoes, TACD. I feel like the palate has vodka notes, but in a good way. David Stanton palate, fresh wood spreads out into the mouth, followed by some sweetness, which comes pleasantly drier. Green tea is green. Finland, the land of 1,000 lakes and pine forests. This for me is like burning a fire, walking through those pine forests kind of by the lake. It's just absolutely wonderful. Steve Cooper, like a leathery campfire. Love this one. Pat Cowling, very peculiar nose, a bit sweaty socks. Your socks must smell really nice when you've been sweating, because mine don't smell like this. Malcolm Tucker with the question. Real Boinga, smoky leather on the nose. Plastic Fantastic leather jacket and sea spray. Real Boinga, very campfire in a pine forest. Nikolai, oh wow, the nose is spectacular. Kevin Blanc, could be French. Blank. Leather jacket, yes. Anthony Mullins, yes. Sorry, nose to me is the mouthwash you get at the dentist. Yes, there's absolutely that. And I was just at the dentist bright and early this morning. It's not looking good for me and my teeth. Nikolai Simon, rosemary smoke is spot on. Pat Cowling, wow, I really don't like this. I love that comment. I absolutely love that comment because I love it when whiskey does that and it's not being affable and friendly. I like it when we do have differences of opinions. I love that nose is absolutely mind-blowing for me, but I like it when people don't like it because it makes you realize what your palate is, and it's just nice, you know.
I just love a Marmite dram, and again, just want to take a moment to affirm that there's no right or wrong with this stuff. And the whole point and the whole philosophy of what, I mean, me as a whiskey lover who loves talking about it and pour and sip in general, I'm sure you, Andy, is just to chat about the cool, interesting stuff. And maybe we like it, maybe we don't like it. Both of those are fine, but it's hilariously good fun to try.
That's exactly it. All my favorite films are films that like people are like, oh, I hate that film, and I'm like, I love that film. And it's the same with whiskey for me. I like it when it's Marmite. Provocative whiskey, if you must. Your Uncle Vanya, throwing herbs on a fire before you get the meat and veg on it. A bit of cheese drip that gets burnt. Love that, your Uncle Vanya. Ali C, leather and pine sap on the nose. Plastic Fantastic tar, pine and leather on the palate. Plastic Fantastic coal tar soap. David Stanton saying his socks don't smell that nice. Mine definitely don't. Steve Cooper, definitely getting that pine. I love this one. This is so different to many others and love a rye whiskey anyway. Your Uncle Vanya reminds me a bit of the Stowning vermouth bottle, but better. That's a
great shout.
Yeah, Bob Byers as well saying dental mouthwash for him. And Joe Lovett smells like a burning Christmas tree. I hope that none of your Christmas trees are burning, but if you do see a burning Christmas tree, it might smell a bit like this.
Yeah, maybe extinguish it as well. Safety first.
Yes.
Before we go back to our guests and bring them back in, I just can confirm it is allegedly alderwood. I did a deep dive. And also, during my quick Google, it transpires that this is almost like a pre-release. So there could be more smoky things to come from the folks at Kyrö, which I would endorse.
I would also love to know, if anyone's Googled before we finish, if there is another smoky rye out there.
Maybe somewhere in the US. We'll ask Matthew. Right, let's bring back Martin from Tomatin and Matthew. Here they are. Hello, both.
The gang's back together.
The gang all back together. Thank you so much for sticking with us and coming back at the very end for more whiskey nerdery and chat.
Not a problem. I'm sad I missed that Kyrö.
It's good, I have to say. It's really good.
Yeah. It's a real interesting one. So before Andy asks you the horrible question, if you're new here, be prepared. It's mean. I would love to get both of your takes on the theories behind the cooling ring situation and reflux in the still. Please correct any errors and any myths that I have put out there. I'll go to Matthew first and then Martin.
I will tie it in with the English whiskey debate as well. In like, what is a pot still really? What's the difference between having a really tall still in Glenmorangie versus throwing water on it like Fettercairn? Like, you're doing the same thing. You are trying to cool it down so that less things get over. The angle of the line arm, like if it's going down or up, depends on what you're doing. You've seen Loman stills. If you've seen those stills at Old Pulteney, they've literally like lopped the top off of them. Like, in my mind, a pot distillation is a batch distillation that has a start, a middle, and an end. And the design of your pot still is something that is always going to be unique to your distillery. And whether or not it's made out of copper completely is so far down the list of priorities there that it's done. It's close.
So
to
you wouldn't base a definition. Yeah. So you wouldn't base a definition of a whole and its provenance by whether it's totally copper.
No. Not today, at least.
Not today.
It's good.
Don't make it out of like lead or something, but some common sense there.
Yeah. Just poison everyone with a whiskey, ideally not. And was there anything to add on the cooling?
Before we started, what was your favourite dram tonight? Because I didn't get it in just before, even though everyone's already answering.
Yes.
But yes, what was your favourite dram tonight? If anyone is new here and they haven't done that question yet, which has been your favourite from this tasting session?
Yes. But yes, back to Matthew. The cooling ring, reflux. That's all it's doing, isn't it? Like almost like stripping out some of those flavours while they're still going up and down and doing their thing.
Yeah, if you imagine the cooler that vapor gets, the more likely the heavier compounds are basically going to turn back into liquid and fall back down. If you actually look at some stills with the windows in them, it will look like it's raining inside the still because it's literally doing that. It's turning back into liquid and falling down. So however you want to create that reflux, like if you have a really tall still, it will cool down just by the fact that it's going up higher. But if you build your distillery in, like, let's say Finland versus England, like just the ambient temperature alone is going to give you a little bit of a different reflux depending on how you're running the still. Run it hot, run it cold, different types of steam, that kind of thing. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yes, I love it. And Martin, any thoughts from you on the old English whiskey argument, or indeed still shapes?
No, to be honest. My lack of experience in this call, I'm feeling very overwhelmed by these answers. So no, it's all new to me, but I'm fascinated to be learning about all this. The real nerdy, techie, geeky kind of stuff about it is just brilliant. For anybody that's just wandered into this conversation, they must be wondering what on earth we're talking about, you know. So I look forward in a year's time to coming back on, and I'll do some research on all the whiskies and English or otherwise.
Oh my God, you have to come back, first of all. Both of you, please come back. But also, like, this is a very personal question now. Do you ever do any journaling for your journey into whiskey? I'd be really fascinated.
No, it's a really good shout, actually. Yeah, I guess it's kind of, for somebody of my mature years, that getting into the industry and learning all about these things is quite interesting. So yeah, that's a really good shout. If I didn't have two beautiful girls at home, 5 and 9, then I might have time to do that. But at the moment, my hands are pretty full between this place and home.
I think I'd also add that whiskey is the sort of industry, I think we've got proof of this on the screen now, where you can get into it like at all points in your career, which I love. And it's incredible. And it's so welcoming and so open, and everyone's so generous with their knowledge. I mean, I don't know. I feel like every single day I'm learning something new, interviewing people. But
I thought you were going to say, I'm so generous with my knowledge.
Oh, absolutely not. I'm a sponge soaking up everyone else's knowledge, please.
No, it is true, though, and that's one thing that surprised me about the industry coming into how opening, welcoming everybody is, other distilleries or within the company and everything like that. It really feels like an industry everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction with a bit of friendly competition as well.
Yep, we love it. All I think people care about is sharing a good dram with good people, which is a joy.
That's absolutely it.
A cheesy note to finish on there.
Cheesy note to finish with. Should I read out some of these inevitable questions as green tea is green tea is green? It said he's had to drop out, but in anticipation of the inevitable question, he's the Fettercairn is the one that tops by a nose from Tomatin. Tomatin's the winner tonight from Plastic Fantastic. David Stanton saying he can't make his mind up whether he likes the Kyrö or not. Again, that's what I was saying to Kristy. That's what I love about certain drams. It's like, that's great. Neil Bolton, Tomatin is the winner for me tonight. Just going back down. Ali C. GlenWyvis for me, but Tomatin was the best of the rest in the box. Malcolm Tucker, my favourite was the Tomatin, just pipping Fettercairn. Pat Cowling, the only one I'll be buying is Tomatin. I disliked the Kyrö. Really interesting that a lot of people have disliked it. And found the others nice, but a bit light for me. Dave Stanton, Tomatin #1 for me, the best one in the last 3 months. There you go. TSD Fettercairn is the favourite tonight, but a very strong box. Nothing I wouldn't drink again. Clive Hampton, Tomatin for me, but very varied box. Anthony Mullins, my best was the Masthouse by Tomatin, a very close second. Real Boing, a favourite dram tonight. Kyrö, I love smoky. GlenWyvis for me is saying Steve Coleman Williams, just because it really gets me thinking. I can't remember who it was who said it's not just a dram you just go, I fancy something tonight. It's one that you actually want to sit down with and really kind of think about. Bob Byers loving the GlenWyvis. The Masthouse was also very good, as was the Fettercairn and the Tomatin. The Kyrö I found confusing. Nikolai Kyrö is the kind of whiskey that's great, but you would only have one glass. I'm saying some of my favourite films are like that. You watch it once and you're like, I'll never watch that again, but it's one of my favourite films. It doesn't make any sense. Though I would drink this Kyrö again. I have to say. Steve Cooper. Kristy, do you want to follow on? I'm talking so much.
Yes, I am. Are we up to Steve Cooper?
Yeah.
I think. Some great drams this evening, but honestly, the Kyrö's for me all day long. DS007, Tomatin for me. Graham Lloyd Jones, sorry, but I have to add Kyrö to the list of whiskies I don't like. It's a very short list. And indeed, it is a short list for me too. I think we are lucky to be...
It makes me like it more when everyone says they don't like it. And they're like, this is great. You don't get it.
Your Uncle Vanya bought a bottle of GlenWyvis at the Aberdeen Festival. I have a Tomatin 14 Portwood at home. Fettercairn underdogs that always deserve attention for any of their expressions. Masthouse and Kyrö equal basket. Plastic. It's good. It's been a pleasure, fine people. Thank you, Plastic. I appreciate that. David Stanton, I'm going to buy the Tomatin. Need this in my collection. I think I could drink this every day. P. Barrett, Fettercairn's the winner today. Ali C, the Kyrö was weird, but in a good way. There we go.
A mixed result tonight, as we always have with Pour and Sit, is like basically everyone's got different palates and we all like different things.
But I enjoy a mixed result. And I actually think all of them are so distinct, which is something I also really enjoy. I don't want to sit down for a tasting and have them all be very similar. I want a spectrum. And we have enjoyed this evening.
Definitely have a spectrum tonight.
Amazing. Well, that rounds us off, I think, for this week. We are back, I believe, on, I think next month is one of those pesky ones where we're going to be on the second one of the month because it's, I'm just going to get my calendar up super quickly. Yes, we'll be back on the 10th of November, which is fun and games, after Bonfire Night. So let us know what you're going to drink for the smoky
bonfire dram.
Bonfire dram.
Hero.
Yes. Don't forget to check out the member store. Don't forget about the advent calendar with that chunky old discount. Keep in touch with us on the socials in between. And Martin and Matthew, it's been such a joy. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been really amazing. Andy, as always, thank you. And
thank you,
be back in a few weeks. See you later, folks. Enjoy the rest of your drams.
Thank you.
Thank you.